That's not I don't have any more. It's slash index slash okay. I tried to this. I found that
Okay. I did. That's the end of the full content. There's a bunch of general life hack stuff that you might want to look at. So he does another there's maybe 20 minutes of life hacker stuff, but same as it was 35 minutes of people around the room before we started the presentation. Like if we had the video on while we were setting out the pizza and program, and now we're drawing. No, not that. Yeah, that one.
You say ETC, but that's because we etc. Usually TCSH was called the convention.
TCSH? Okay. It is this week, yep. Okay. Somebody signed in. Says there are 2 viewers. The second one you? Why do I not see the...
You found it in yours? Says he hasn't been invited or anything else to join.
Well, I told it to invite him. Yeah.
Why do you believe 518? I think you would prefer not that.
I just tried reinviting him.
Very useful. Talking though, right? You didn't write all the code.
Yep.
So what you do is you write you have to do this use if regardless and you set 12 blocks. So that's that. And that does the if you're in this version enable the feature. And that you actually have to modify it using that code that environment variable and copy over. How much is that environment? 5 blocks to dash capital and your local library. And in that local library, you can say, give 518, use experimental feature. There must be some way to looking it up. All the experimental stuff is less stuff, which might be this is not saying that possibly I'm just not smart enough.
Okay. We do, in which case we want to copy it from here. Yeah, but if you're putting it in a local library that is loaded to be an environment variable.
Hello?
And you're now on the screen. Unfortunately, our video
Hello.
camera that we dug out of the box is junk.
Can you hear us? Yeah, the microphone is off.
Now it,
So you heard us complaining about the video.
I can hear a little bit of murmuring.
murmuring. Okay. Did I just pull you over there?
Your mic's way too high there.
Trying to find a happy medium. Uh, How's the audio now? Happy meeting?
It's potentially okay.
We watched the middle Perl sec. To Ricky's philosophy question. Do you have a question the modules in it?
Yeah, what is what?
Do something.
I can only barely hear you. If you guys want to type your questions, I can give you my answers, though. Right. So when is use less going to do something? Well, I don't know. I don't think it'll. It's very likely to happen. If you want. I don't know if I'm hearing myself now or what, but I'm going to keep talking. Yeah, okay, I'm hearing myself come through your mic. The problem with implementing anything with use less is that if you put it in the core, you have to have two implementations that are both equally tested for correctness, and you need to make sure that they actually help. You don't want to get back to the situation with pseudo hashes where I'm going to mute this so I don't hear myself. You don't get back to the situation with pseudo hashes where we added the pseudo hash construct to the language that was supposed to make things faster. And when you tested it, yeah, sure, it did make things faster, but only because it slowed everything else down but itself. It didn't actually make an improvement to the language. And similarly with less, if we made something like use less CPU, use less memory or something significant. Oh, they muted their side too. Okay, I'll stop talking. Okay, well then I'll talk again. Anyway, yeah. So if you have to implement two paths, one for less memory and one for not less memory, you have a whole lot more testing, a whole lot more complexity, and I don't think we've really seen a whole lot of benefit for that path. But that said, you can always see which less strictures are in effect and write your own code to take advantage of it. But so far, I haven't seen anybody who cared to do so, and I think that's the fundamental reason less itself doesn't do anything. Did I have a best of 518? That's a good question. Yeah, I guess in that talk, right, they get to the end of the section on new stuff, and the question is, why didn't you talk about 518? And I just plumb forgot. I think the thing that I like best from 518 is that we started adding warnings to things that were experimental, because for a really long time, we would have features in the Perl core that were called experiments, and the only way to know they were experiments is to have noticed in some announcement, or maybe it was documented in Perl Delta or somewhere obscure. And so the idea was, they're experiments. We can change them whenever we want. We can break the language, and it's your fault if we break your code because we told you they were experiments. But we did a really bad job of communicating that, which made people really not want us to change experimental features. So in 5.18 and 5.20, we've begun issuing warnings when you're using an experimental feature that you can turn off by acknowledging that it's experimental and you realize that you're potentially going to have your code broken out from under you. And I'm happy with that because it makes maintenance of Perl, the language, a lot easier. There's a lot of good stuff in 5.18. The two things that are useful to anybody but me are the hash randomization, where in Perl 5.18 we randomize the hash. We randomize your hash seeds much more aggressively and much more reliably than we used to. So you don't tend to see the same hash order between runs and between hashes, which is made things better in a lot of ways, both detecting bugs and avoiding attacks. And we added an experimental feature that I really, really like, which is the new types of character class sets, where you can say, instead of just I want A to Z or I want word characters, you can use set operations like I want the intersection of all digits and letters, or that would be the union of digits and letters, or the intersection of letters and Cyrillic. And you can identify characters across the entire Unicode character set much more efficiently, which is really, really nice. If you ever had to do that before, you have to use look behind assertions, and it's a real mess. Those are probably my favorites. Yeah, smart matches are real. That's a problem on multiple levels, and just about everybody agrees we need to fix it, but nobody really agrees how. And convincing people that it is going to get fixed and changed was really important. And I know it's a big pain in the butt because the feature was not really well marked as experimental. In fact, maybe it wasn't experimental, but everybody agreed it had to change. So that caused a lot of annoyance for a lot of people. But I think it's going to be good for Perl in the long run to fix that. Yeah, hash randomization broke a lot of tests. When we first put it in, and we have people who run smokes continuously. They're always testing all of CPAN against the latest commits, and that broke a lot of stuff. And we had tested that in a branch and seen how much stuff it was going to break. And I think it was mostly Yves Orton who was sending out patches, but a few people were testing this and sending out patches. And in almost every case, the problem was people had written tests that relied on the fact that almost every time you ran the program, it would have the same hash ordering. And so the tests would be reliable because they were relying on hash ordering, which isn't really reliable. I have a great slide. I should just put it in all of my talks about Perl, where you can put the same contents into you can put the same content into a whole bunch of different hashes, and you always get the same result, unless you pick very specific keys, and then you start getting different results all the time because they have collisions. And so you think your code is fine because of how it relies on hash ordering, but if you happen to get the right keys in there, it breaks. So it was a big pain in the butt. A lot of people had to fix stuff, but yeah, breaking tests is a lot better than breaking code. And what we tended to find out in a lot of cases was the code was actually broken because it didn't deal with random hash order properly, and this exposed those bugs in the code by making the tests fail intermittently, which is a pain in the butt, but once you find the bug, you can really fix your code, and that's great. Will yada 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 someday croak? I hope so. One of the problems is making yada yada croak is not so bad. It's not great either, but we need to load carp. And if you've got some little program and suddenly it's going to fail and it loads carp, well, okay, your program's getting bigger, but only when it was going to throw an exception anyway. But it's kind of a mess. Something we've been talking about for years and years is adding real exceptions to Perl. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. I really want it to happen. One of the things that we need for that, I think, is a better facility for generating stack traces other than using carp, something fast and something internal. We'd also like that for improving the way methods work and the way signatures work. There's a lot of reasons to have that in the core. And if we had that, it would be a lot easier to get stack traces from things like signature mismatch and yada, yada, yada. So I think that just making yada, 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 the triple dot operator, load carp could work, but I'd kind of rather use this as one more reason to try and get better stack traces in the language itself. Right, something like a carp in C. We had someone who a few years ago was working on fast C-level stacked generators that were they sounded really good in design, but it wasn't delivered, and that person's no longer working on the core. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if I say it in that talk, but I really don't do any. I do very, very little core programming. I've only got 2 or 3 commits that touch the C code. I'm not much of a C programmer. So whenever someone says that sounds like a good place to start working on the core, I just throw up my hands and say, I don't know, maybe it is. And if you want to try, try it. People on Perl 5 porters would love to give you advice on how to do it, and most of them because they want to be helpful. And it's something we all really want. Fast stack traces and caller abstractions are really, really good. And if somebody wants to work on that, definitely give it a go. What do I use to version files in Etsy? So I have 3 kinds of boxes that I worry about in my life. And one is my laptop. And my laptop, I run OS 10. I don't really customize anything in Etsy there. I customize just a teeny tiny bit in like opt local Etsy, and I shamefully do not use any kind of version control. I have a Linode where I run Manxam.org and a few other things, and I'm in the same situation. I don't use any version control on Etsy, which is bad. But when I'm at work and I get paid to be a professional and actually pretend I'm not a completely irresponsible jerk, we manage all of our boxes with Chef. Well, that's not quite true. We manage most of our boxes with Chef, and some of them with Puppet, because we're in the middle of moving from Puppet to Chef. And that is how we manage the stuff in Etsy. So we have cookbooks on how to build boxes. You know, like here's a cookbook for building a mail exchanger, and here's a cookbook for building a web server, an archiver, an API server. It's, I don't know, 40 kinds of recipes. And those set up all the stuff in Etsy. And I really like that. I would like, if I had more time, to write some recipes for Chef or something like it, to build boxes like my Linode, or even my laptop. So I could say, I want to switch to a new Linode, I've got a new laptop, whatever, and instead of using Apple's migration utility, which is kind of, you don't really know what it's doing, and I always find out after I've got a new machine that it missed 4 of my 27 steps to set up a box, and I have to do those later. But of course, if they were all in Chef, I'd run this thing, all of my files would get installed, and it would still all be Git. We put everything in Git. If I need to control anything, I always put it in Git, because Git is awesome. So Git in something like Chef, Puppet, Ansible. That concludes my answer. Are there any good tutorials on how to create a smudge filter? I'm looking up what a smudge filter is. Run this code whenever you check anything out. So this sounds to me like hooks. Is that roughly correct? I mean, the answer might just be I don't know at this point, since I don't know what a smudge filter is. He wants date in checked out file. Yeah, okay. So I'm not sure that there is a good answer to this. The typical answer, the answer you get from the Git core group is, or at least was, don't do that. That should not be how your workflow goes. As for hooks, the thing about hooks is, here is smudge and clean are similar to hooks but different phases. Git, there used to be a man page for Git hook, which I'm trying to look up, but yeah, Git hooks. There are hooks. And so you could imagine there being a hook for checkout, like post checkout, right? So you can put programs in your .git directory that are hooks that get run at different phases of doing stuff. And one of the phases is post checkout. So post checkout will run a program after your working tree has been updated. So you run git checkout some branch, and it switches where head points, and it updates all the files in your working tree, and then it would run this program. So you could totally write a program there that would change those things. And I imagine there's a pre-commit. What you'd really want is something like pre-index. And this is where it gets wonky, right? Like if you don't want to commit the fact that you've changed the content, you always change line 1 to include the date, but you don't want the date checked in. Or maybe you do. But if you do want it checked in, you're fine. If you don't, there's not going to be a place for that, because it gets really weird in Git, because you have things that are staged or not staged. But my answer really comes down to what you want to learn about are hooks. That Git has a lot of hooks. I think that the post-checkout hook would help you with this. And they add more places to put hooks now and then. And then the question becomes, if the question was, are there good tutorials on how to create these filters? If you can do it with hooks, are there good tutorials on how to create hooks? I don't know. When I wanted to create hooks, I read man git hooks, and it was okay. I don't remember how bad it was, but it was enough that I got whatever I needed to get done. I think that there's actually a Perl module to make writing hooks for Git a lot easier, and I'm going to search for that, but apart from that, I don't think I have any other good advice. Yeah, in fact, look at that. There's something on CPAN called Git hooks, and they have a number of Git hooks implemented, and well, I don't know if it's any good, but there's certainly a lot of it. So that's a start. Git : hooks. Where are the slides posted? They're not. The only posting of these slides right now is the video. I'll probably post the slides eventually. I'm giving this talk I'm giving a talk with the same title at YAPC North America next month. It's in June. But it's shorter than the talk I gave, probably the same length as the talk you watched, but I'm going to swap content in and out. And probably after I've done that, I will publish slides, and I'll make sure that I publish everything or close to everything that I had on my list, and there'll be slides up then. So, and I have my slides at Speaker Deck. I will give you guys a URL. Oh, in fact, wait, the slides are already there. What do you know? So that's where the slides are. My long answer was total rubbish. This is just a good-looking site, Speaker Deck. Is there, I don't even remember that. I should go through these slides again myself. A lot of slides here, aren't there? Oh, Mr. Fusion, right. Yep. It's funny. I made myself laugh. No, it's not. So the question is the arrow at splat syntax for postfix array dereferencing and so on derived from Perl 6? No, Perl 6 doesn't, well, I mean, maybe somebody there can tell me I'm wrong, but it doesn't really have this kind of operation. Sometimes you use a star in Perl 6 to make a list splatty, or to fold it out into a list of elements. But Perl, all right, so sometimes people complain that Perl 6 has all this great stuff, and people don't want to wait for Perl 6 because they want to use Perl 5. And they just think we should say, go to Perl 6, find the really cool stuff, and port it back. And it doesn't really work because Perl 6, even though it looks a lot like Perl, has a number of really, really different assumptions about how stuff works. And if you just try taking Perl 6 structures and putting them into Perl 5, it becomes a big mess. And this is a great example of one of the ways this happens. Perl 5 is unusual because it has this idea of context. And Perl 6 is still Perl. It still has context. But its ideas of context are pretty different. And if you pass @foo into stuff, you can really pass @foo, this array object, which is totally different than how things work in Perl 5. So there's no really equivalent operation to these kind of dereferencing because you don't need them because the references are already sort of the first class way you deal with stuff. So somebody's making a comment. Yeah, sure. So Tim K2 says you can say like $thing.array. I think you can do that, and yes, you can, and those are dealing with how traits and roles work in Perl 6. So it's not stolen from there. Where it really comes from is, for a long time I've been saying that we needed postfix dereferencing that solves a lot of problems, and it solves them better than previous attempts. I think better than previous attempts at solutions did. But we didn't have a syntax for it, and you want to have an arrow, and there's a lot of things you could put after the arrow, and what are they going to be? And everybody had these ideas for what you could put there, but I always felt like most of the suggestions had really gross problems that made it harder to learn, harder to understand. And the grossest problem that I ever found with this @sigil star, which was originally @sigil : was that it's ugly. But I'm not really concerned about ugliness. I don't think it doesn't turn my stomach. It's not the most beautiful syntax, but it's better than circumfix. It's clearer than circumfix. And okay, there's a little more syntax than you want, but that's Perl. Perl has a little more punctuation than you want. So it really just came from what was available. You need to be postfix. It needed to be something syntactically available, which a lot of punctuation was not. And it needed to have as few exceptions as possible. So that's where it came from, not Perl 6. The pair slices combine nicely with list-util pair functions. I'm not sure I've seen those functions. Let's go look at them now. Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff being added to list-util, and I've not been keeping on top of it. Pair map, I see. Pair grep, pair first, pair map, pairs. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so there's a bunch of new functions in list-util that take lists of key value pairs and return stuff. Lists, counts, pairs, key value lists. Yeah, that looks nice. I'll have to use this. The thing I'm really happy with, and I don't know whether I go into it in the talks you just watched, is the way that slices, including pair slices, combine with postfix dereferencing, because one of the #1 problems I have when I deal with references is getting a slice of something that's already down in the reference. So $#ref, and then a key in braces, and then an index in brackets, and then I want a slice of whatever's in there. Remembering exactly where to put the squiggly braces is a real. I mean, I've been writing Perl for over 10 years, and I still have to stop and think about where these braces go. But the postfix stuff just blows all that away. Where do they go? They go at the end. You're done. Good. I'm glad I showed that off because it's worth showing off. Randall needs to update show me your references now. I'm really excited about those two changes together. They're to me, they might be more exciting than subroutine signatures for my own code. What's my opinion of MOP being added to 520? Well, it's not going to happen. 520 is coming out this week. But let's talk about 521. This week. The first release candidate of 520 will come out this week. So 520.0 will come out May, hopefully. It's been in code freeze for a while. The Perl 5 MOP. So the Perl 5 P5-MOP is a project that Stephen Little's been working on off and on for a while now. And the idea is Stephen Little started Moose, and Moose is a big, featureful meta-object programming system that is supposed to bring some of the ease of writing object-oriented code from Perl 6 back to Perl 5, not by porting the features back directly, which would have been, it wouldn't have worked. Oh, you've lost audio. Let's see. Do you still have no audio? Because I can keep talking if you can keep listening and telling me whether you hear anything. I see my little green light telling me that it's sending audio. I can type too. Mop jinxed audio. I guess people who are watching the video can't see what I type. Tim K2 still has audio. Someone has audio. Oh, Boston Perl Mongers has left the chat. Well, now it's just me and everybody watching on the internet. Oh, they're back? Can you guys hear me now? I don't like saying can you hear me now anymore because I feel like that trick from the commercial. It reset. I don't know what that means.
The Google Magic shut down and restarted.
Okay.
And I think we're good again.
Okay. Well, then I'll get back to my answer. The MOP, right. So the P5 MOP was, so Moose gave us this set of features inspired by Perl 6 in some ways to make object-oriented programming easier to write. Not only by making it easy to write classes, but by giving a meta-object protocol. And if you don't know what that is, it's a model for how your object-oriented programming works, which lets you change how your object-oriented programming works by subclassing its bits and pieces. There's a famous book about this called The Art of the Meta-Object Protocol, and it's totally worth reading at least the first half of the book. So Stephen Little then said he wanted to take P5, to take something like Moose, but or a much smaller subset that was intended to be really, really fast and to give Perl more first-class features as compared to what Moose did, which was build all these features as second-order structures. So in some ways, although I hesitate to say this is really what it does, P5 Mop would add traits to Perl 5 and would add classes and attributes. And by being willing to change the core or to be implemented tightly coupled with the core, it would be really, really fast. And the question was, now that I've explained what that is, the question was, what's my opinion of that going into Perl 5.20 something? So far, what we've seen have been prototypes. I mean, yes, I like the idea of having a meta-object protocol for Perl 5, and I like the idea of there being one reliable, good implementation that's not too opinionated and that we can put in core and everybody can use. I like that. What we've seen so far have been prototypes. They're not things that are robust, that are really integrated with core, that are free of weirdo tricks to make them work. So I don't think we've seen anything that is ready to go into the core. Stephen and I have talked in the past about the path to getting into the core, and his last discussion with me included some amount of life on CPAN. You would install P5 Mop from CPAN onto your recent Perl, and that would give it some time to get stress tested in the real world before it goes into core. So it seems really unlikely to me that we'd be able to get it into Perl 5.22 responsibly, but it's really hard to say. You know, we need to see where it goes in the next 6 months before I could say anything about 5.22.
Unmuting us when you're not. I'm going to try to talk. Question: can Stephen present Mop, since he lives halfway between New York and here? Yeah. With reality there. Thank you for straightening this out. Is that any better?
Maybe.
The green ones over there are input. The rise on our picture and his rise on his picture. Are we better now?
Yeah, I think so.
That is a no.
Stephen presented the mop there and was very enthusiastic. Yeah, well, it's certainly something to be enthusiastic about. I'm really looking forward to seeing it continue to evolve. I just don't make any commitments about it getting into the core until I see a real product. P5 mop on CPAN would be C code tightly integrated. So as it's implemented now, the only requirement, I think, that P5 mop has of your Perl's C interface is that it implement the keyword, the pluggable keyword feature, which is 5.12, 5.14. There's talk of what stuff we'd want to have happen to core to make the P5 mop as native as possible, and there's a wide-ranging set of things that have been talked about, including changing how stashes work in classes and adding a new type of SV. There's been a lot of talk about different things that are needed, but nothing that's come to me in recent history. So the P5 mop that would hit CPAN, hopefully, although I don't know exactly the plans they have right now, hopefully it would be something you could run on something earlier than 5.20. You could run it on 5.18, 5.16. I think it's reasonable at some point for them to say, well, we're going to add some things to the core to make this all make sense, and that's going to mean that the final real release of P5 mop, the 1.0 release, is going to require Perl 5.22. But they're not in that position now. The P5 mop runs on a relatively old Perl. Without speed better than Moose, it won't be a good test. Well, the stuff that P5 mop does is less than Moose, and it's faster than Moose. I haven't seen the speed. So over the last 6 to 9 months, I'm not sure the timeline, a bunch of those guys have been refactoring stuff to be XS. So not part of the core, but to be written in C, lots of it to be written in C and much faster. And I don't know how fast it's gotten, but Stephen, he used some kind of word like really fast or blazing or something, maybe just compared to how slow it was. But I think it's a lot faster than Moose. But they're different things. Moose gives you a whole lot of functionality, and you're not going to get that with P5 mop. You're going to get a small subset of it that's probably enough for many, many people. But the goal is to make it fast. So I think that what you get on CPAN should be fast. And of course, if it comes out and it's on CPAN and it's slow, the goal may not be to test that it's fast and to get people to use it, but just to test, is this a good set of features? Can we use this for building the stuff we need? And if we can, then it's worth making faster. And if you can't, you try writing production code using it, and it's a big pain in the butt because it's not a good design, and there's no point in making it fast. This typical programming issue, right? First get the right answer, then get the right answer fast. Okay, well, thank you for doing this experimental QA also, and hope you guys have fun with this format again in the future. I'm going to go have a beer, I think. I encourage you to consider doing the same.